Hello, friends. In this episode, I'm continuing my reading of Henry Stephen Salt's collection of essays titled A Plea for Vegetarianism. In this episode, I'll read Chapter 4, Some Results of Food Reform. When I read something that is 139 years old, I don't know if I'll bump into something so antiquated that it's now disproved or if it will just feel quaint, but I'm surprised with just how well Henry Salt's heartfelt plea for vegetarianism holds up. In this next chapter, I admit I was surprised that one of the results of vegetarianism that Salt lists is sobriety. I quit drinking March 1st, 2022, almost 3 years ago, and I have never associated my stopping drinking in any way with my quitting eating meat. Until now. I don't know if the two are related, but it sure makes sense that a finer appreciation of food, a greater attention to what goes into my body, a larger appreciation of the beauty of life, all associated with sobriety, would go hand in hand with not harming animals by killing them for food. Let's see what else Henry had to say about some of the possible results of vegetarianism, shall we? Here is the next chapter in A Plea for Vegetarianism by Henry Stephen Salt. Chapter 4, Some Results of Food Reform. Those who make conscientious trial of a vegetarian diet will find, after 2 or 3 years of experience, that they have secured 3 main advantages. Their health will be better, their household expenses will be less, and they will have the satisfaction of feeling that they are in no way responsible for the cruelties of the slaughterhouse. But in addition to the direct benefits, there are various indirect and incidental results which are worthy of far more serious consideration than they usually receive. 1. First among these, and of most pressing interest at the present day, is a remarkable fact that abstinence from animal food almost invariably brings with it abstinence from all alcoholic drinks. In 99 cases out of 100, the vegetarian will be a total abstainer, not merely because the desire of stimulating drink dies a natural death in the absence of stimulating food, but also because those who have learnt the charm of simplicity in diet are not likely to care for drinks which are unnecessary and expensive. The adoption of a vegetarian diet system would strike at the root of intemperance among well-to-do people by the reduction of overstimulating foods and the promotion of general frugality of living. Again, on the other hand, if vegetarian principles were more widely understood and practiced, there would be a much larger supply of cheap and wholesome food within the reach of our lower orders, and the chief cause of drunkenness among the poor, their destitution and hunger, might be gradually and surely eradicated. Thus, the intemperate habits of the overfed rich and the underfed poor would be checked by one and the same principle of food reform. Vegetarianism would teach the rich the lesson that enough is as good as a feast, and also that water is as good a drink as wine, while it would provide the poor with plenty of cheap and nourishing food and leave them no excuse for having recourse to the pothouse and gin shop. If the poor could be taught the value of wholemeal bread, oatmeal, and lentils, a greater blow would be dealt at intemperance than by 1,000 lectures and addresses. On these grounds, all those who are interested in the temperance movement, and what sane man is not, should at least consider attentively the arguments advanced in favor of vegetarianism. More immediate and crying evil is undeniably caused by the use of alcohol than by the use of flesh, and the temperance question is therefore, in one sense, of more urgent importance than that of food reform. But in the long run, vegetarianism is vastly more important than teetotalism, inasmuch as the larger question includes the smaller one in itself. If food reform be once established, drink reform will inevitably follow, but as long as flesh food is largely eaten, no lectures on temperance or good Templar meetings or establishment of coffee houses or acts of parliament will succeed in extirpating our national vice of drunkenness. The roast beef of old England has done its work, and the natural result has followed. 2. Another habit which is rendered almost impossible by a fleshless diet is that of smoking. A vegetarian has as little liking for tobacco as for alcohol, and if our diet system were reformed, we should soon cease to prefer tobacco fumes to pure air. There's no need to enlarge here on the injurious effects of tobacco smoking. Nay, we may even afford to admit for the time that the habit is as innocuous as its votaries assert. Yet when we hear smokers declare that tobacco is a blessing to men because it soothes their mental troubles and enables them to work more contentedly, we cannot but retort that a person who lives a happy and active life without the use of any narcotic must be in a far sounder and healthier state than one who needs it. In other words, the use of tobacco is in no case a positive good to men, but at the utmost the lesser of two evils. If we cannot enjoy life and do our duty without inhaling smoke, then by all means let us go at once to the tobacconist. But at least let us not be silly enough to imagine that other people are less happy because they do not smoke. A wholesome taste for cleanliness and fresh air, says Ruskin, is one of the final attainments of humanity. There are not many European gentlemen, even in the highest classes, who have a pure and right love of fresh air. They would put the filth of tobacco even into the first breeze of a May morning. Vegetarianism may or may not be the foolish theory that some shrewd people would have it appear, but it certainly has the practical advantage of eventually abolishing any desire for tobacco smoke. 3. But besides these definite results, the vegetarian will find himself a great gainer in what I may call general simplicity or good taste in diet. I do not, of course, mean to assert that this is a special virtue to vegetarians to which no flesh eater can attain, but merely that the vegetarian, coteris paribus, is more likely to be wise and thoughtful about his diet than the flesh eater. For there is good taste in eating and drinking, as in all other things, and that style of diet is obviously in best taste which keeps the body in most equable health, neither pampering it by overfeeding nor weakening by excessive abstinence. This golden mean between gluttony on the one side and asceticism on the other would be more widely attained if the use of flesh food were discontinued. For the vegetarian who understands the importance of the question of diet is, as a rule, less likely to eat too much than those who never consider the nature of their food, and he will be wiser not only in the quantity but also in the quality of what he eats. Among vegetarians, there will be no such vulgar perversions of taste as among those who affect to find a delicacy in venison and game when it is high, or in cheese when it is ripe, or still worse, in the grosser inventions of the gourmand, where cruelty as well as vulgarity has done its work, in the white veal and crimped cod and other dishes that shall be here unmentioned. Let flesh eaters relish these their delights, but as the food of the vegetarian will be moderate in quantity, so in quality it will be fresh and simple and pure. But moderation is also far removed from asceticism, which is merely the reaction against gross feeding and would never have come into existence under a simple and natural system of living. Under a vegetarian regime, there will be no asceticism, which has been the weakness, I will not say the fault, of many a high and noble nature, and cannot be in itself good or desirable. Those who weaken the body by excessive privations must weaken the mind also, and will consequently be less able to do good in the world than those who practice a wise and unvarying moderation. And lastly, it may be well to point out why a vegetarian diet, which would thus establish temperance without austerity and liberality without extravagance, is, from an intellectual point of view, to be regarded as of such extreme importance. And here I cannot resist the desire of quoting a remarkable passage from a pamphlet published by the Vegetarian Society. Can you imagine a gross feeder on turtle soup or venison, high game and rotten cheese, a self-indulgent drinker, being a man of bright, pure, simple tastes and instincts? Would you go to such a man and expect him to catch the ethereal beauties of some of Shelley's choicer pieces? You would not. You would feel, and justly, that such perceptions were too fine, too delicate for him, that the animal was too strong in him, the mind, the spirit, too little, too weak, too puny, for such higher thoughts as these. Grossness of diet is indeed a fertile cause of dullness and dejection of mind, and therefore we find that most great men have been abstemious in their way of living, and especially so when occupied on any great work. The complaint of Sir Andrew Argucheck in Twelfth Night, "I am a great eater of beef, and I believe that does harm to my wit," is only one instance of many recognitions of a remarkable psychological fact. Perhaps the most comprehensive reason ever urged against the use of flesh food is to be found in the saying attributed, I know not on what authority, to Lamartine, that he had no right to make himself stupider than God made him. In some cases it would be a difficult task to effect this, but alas, is it not a task that daily being attempted with more or less success in the houses of many of our flesh-eating friends who keep a good table? That concludes Chapter 4 of Henry Salt's A Plea for Vegetarianism. I will continue to Chapter 5 next episode. If you'd like to learn more about the rationale for vegetarianism from a modern hero, I recommend Earthling Ed's book, How to Argue with a Meat Eater, even if, or especially if, you yourself are the meat eater. Several years ago, I started my journey with Meatless Mondays. About a year later, I went to Meatless 6 days, and then finally to no meat. If you need a repertoire of meat-free food, a quick Google search for any dish you love will find a tasty vegan equivalent. In my journey, I tried to learn a new vegan recipe a week, and before I knew it, I had no more worries that I could keep myself and loved ones well fed without harming other beings. If you're still on the fence, I honor your journey, and even if you start with 1 or 2 more days a week without meat, you will have a profound effect on the earth and your fellow beings. Thank you for joining me for the Peace is Here podcast. Until next time, sit with yourself in silence every day. That's self with a capital S. We are all scholars of peace. Peace and love to you all. Podcast music is Dalai Lama Riding a Bike by Javier Peque Rodriguez. A link to his music on Spotify and Bandcamp is in the show notes. If you enjoyed this podcast, it really helps me if you subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcasts. I'm Avis and I write the Pedro the Water Dog Saves the Planet book series, which are a series of environmental adventure novellas. Books 1 through 5 are available at all your favorite online bookstores or at aviskalfsbeck.com. Book 6, Manu Mutante, is coming out soon. Go to aviskalfsbeck.com to be notified when new books come out. You love peace, I love peace, we love peace. Support messages of peace and the planet by joining my Patreon for as little as a cup of coffee per month at patreon.com. Just search Avis Kalfspeak or Pedro the Water Dog to find me. Thank you again. Listen for the peace.